So you're up in the north this year.
I am, and it's
Very cool. It's quite what?
quite lovely.
Are you there physically right now? It's not too hot.
Yeah. I'm here physically, but I'm in an air-conditioned room, so.
That's the way to do it. Yeah, in the summer. So let's go ahead and get started. We're a little late. I'm gonna share my screen. Here we go. Jill, I think you helped me with this when I was in Hualien. Is it better to share a tab
We
or an
yes, the
entire
tab.
screen? Share
You
the
can
tab.
share the tab, so you can
Okay,
still see your audience.
very important. Okay, so I'm gonna share. Oh, before I do that, I also want to share our Jamboard link. We're gonna do a Jamboard in a few minutes. So I'll put that in the chat first of all. Okay. So this is for later. It's our Jamboard in a few minutes. You can just pull up the tab if you want, hold on to it. I'm going to start with the presentation. Okay, can everybody see okay? Is it too small? Should I maximize? How's it look? A little small?
Yeah, maybe full screen it.
Go full, okay. Thank you. Ooh, okay. This looks better to me. How about you guys? Thank you. Okay, guys. As far as I know, you guys are returning ETFs. You've been in ETA for at least a year, so you kind of know the routine a little bit, how Fulbright works in Taiwan, how teaching works from region to region, from school to school. So some of this will probably seem a little bit, hopefully not tedious, but you'll know a bit of it already. But at the same time, please bear with us because, for example, we have, of course, some new advisors this year, two of them which you'll meet digitally pretty soon. So we're excited about that. But of course, we're also excited that many of you came back. Some of you are in the same region, so I won't know you. I was in the South last year. So for example, I met Kiambi, and it's great that you guys move around and you try out new places because despite being pretty tiny, Taiwan in some ways is huge. It has a lot to offer, a lot of geography and culture, and amazing food, as we know. So let's get into it. Right, well, let's briefly introduce ourselves. A few of you know me. As I mentioned, I was in the southern region last year. I was in Kaohsiung. So I think they mixed up the regions a little bit this year, but they're more or less the same. So for a southern advisor, we were in charge of Kaohsiung, Pingdong, and Jinmen, which is nowhere near the south of Taiwan, but it's a very unique place, so I'm not complaining. So I'm looking forward to being more in the north and maybe a bit in the east this coming year. And I've been in TESOL for about 16 years. Grew up in California, Northern California, although I did my bachelor's in Southern California. Master's in New York City. I lived there for about 7 years. And since then, I've been working with exchange programs through the State Department. So for 2 years, I was an English language fellow in the Philippines. Life-changing experience, met amazing people, amazing teachers, diplomats, politicians, and so on. Continued working with the the Office of English Language Programs for a year and a half before Fulbright. And so I've been around the world a few times. I started off in Korea, as a lot of people do. I've lived in Hungary twice, France, Philippines, Mexico, and second year in Taiwan. And as I mentioned, we have 2 new advisors. I've met them briefly, but they're both really lovely people. I'm looking forward to working with them. I believe Yihua will be in Kaohsiung, which is very exciting. The team in the South is really cool. Fonda, Kenny, Ellie, really sweet, really helpful people. And Ramon, you'll be in the North, also doing EMI. We'll talk about EMI in a minute, but I think Ramon will be around Taiyuan. So I'll let them introduce themselves. Ladies first, Yiwa, are you there?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Hi, I'm Mihua. I'm from Taipei, Taiwan, and I'm gonna base in Kaohsiung this year. And I'm a little bit different from other advisors. I have a master degree in teaching Chinese as a foreign language, and I was once a CTA, Chinese TA, through an MOE program. And so I was kind of in your position, but in different language. I've been in like I've been in language education for like 8 years and teaching Mandarin and English. I live in Canada, Germany, Ireland, and USA. I speak Mandarin, English, Taiwanese, and German. So if you have any questions about Taiwanese culture or international or intercultural communication, you're always welcome to ask. I'm very happy to help. Nice to meet you all. And Ron?
Hi, can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Howdy, my name is Ramon Mislang, and I'm originally from San Francisco, but I've been overseas for the good part of 20 years, so I sometimes forget how to be American, so excuse me if I forget a lot of recent American pop references. I do have a master's degree at the Monterey Institute of International Studies, and much like Sean, I was a fellow in the Philippines at the University of Santo Tomas, but I've also been an ETA, a returning ETA, and a super returning ETA in Hong Kong. So I totally understand some of your situations and experiences. My current research interest is self-directed learning and how that sets up autonomous learning at self-access centers. During my free time, I love everything matcha. I like to watch videos about minimalism and interior design. And for sports, I love basketball. For languages, I've studied about 40 different languages, but I can say that in particular, the languages you can see on the screen are the ones I have most interest in because those are the countries that I think I'll be working in the future. So I study those as a primary language. If you do have any questions, please reach out. I'm new to Taiwan, so you probably, in many ways, help me out in terms of language and culture and everything else. So looking forward to meeting everyone. Let's have a good year, and I'll give it back to Sean. Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys. Ramon, what's the hardest language you've tried to pick up?
Definitely Vietnamese. Vietnamese is sometimes a combination of many different languages I've studied. It's a tonal language, much like Mandarin and Cantonese. There's a lot of slang. There's a lot of kind of capital language, like Tokyo language versus non-Tokyo, or Taipei versus non-Taipei language. And it's also regional, so anywhere you go, it seems like they speak something different. So definitely Vietnamese, but only for speaking. For writing, I would probably say something like Arabic is quite hard, and so is Thai.
Cool. Thank you. I think we'll have other chances to talk about that. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Keep moving along. Right, so we are going to go ahead and take a look at the Jamboard, just to share a little bit about what you like about Taiwan. So you can go ahead and pull up the link I put in the chat. If anybody joined late, I can put it again. But it's really just a chance for you to share kind of like, the thing you really like about Taiwan. It's supposed to be a little bit quirky, so I put Carrefour, which is not a Taiwanese company. But I loved the Carrefour that I could walk to in Kaohsiung. I was there almost daily. So that's kind of my, that's one of my happy places in Taiwan. But I think there are a lot of other ones. For example, some of the islands the public transit, like the HSR. I'm sure everybody has a strong opinion about where they like to get their convenience store coffee. So please go ahead and show up in the Jamboard. I'm going to put the link again in the chat. And there's a few pages, so you don't have to put it on the first page. You can stretch out. You can put a picture. You don't necessarily have to write about it. You can just show us, and we'll be like, "Oh, I know it. I know what they mean." Right? So again, if anybody joined late, the link is in the chat. And Ramon, I think, well, you visited before, so you have an idea about what you like in Taiwan, and Iwa has even more insider knowledge. Okay, so we're popping up with all kinds of exciting things. I know some of them are a little new to me. Can somebody who wrote about the hot springs share about that? Because I believe most of them are kind of in the south or the center part of the country, but maybe you have like a favorite one we should know about. Who's the hot springs?
Hi, yeah, I wrote about the hot springs. I was in Taidong last year, and we have a place called Zhiben, which is like a hot spring town, and it's like a 10-minute scooter ride. So I'd go there maybe like once a week because they have like a Japanese style one, and that's the one I prefer, and that's something you won't have in the States. It's a great time.
Yeah, I think because I'm buddies with Ting, and she was based in Taidong, so she would always be like, "Oh, I'm just going to the spa for a few like an hour or something." And I was very jealous because you can't do that in Kaohsiung. Would you mind writing it in the chat? Is it Jamie?
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. And I'm curious, like how much does that cost NTD for a visit?
The one I like is like 250-ish if you buy from the right person.
So there's like ticket dealers in Taidong. I didn't know that.
Yeah, like you have to like not buy it from the hotel.
place
You have to
itself?
buy it from like the vendor before the
Okay.
hotel.
Okay. Yeah, that's so interesting in Taiwan because you can like buy movie tickets. You could buy movie tickets on the street near my house instead of in the cinema. So I was like, how does that work? It was a little sketchy, but I guess if you want to save a couple NTD. So thanks for the spa tip. Looking forward to checking that out. Kindness of strangers, definitely can identify with that, especially neighbors. I know my neighbors were very helpful my first few weeks and not knowing how to take out the trash and just looking stupid, like running down the alley with one bag of trash, one bag of recyclables, and just looking very lost, I guess. The wind lions in Kinmen, very fun and very windy there. Like a lot of places, a lot of islands in Taiwan, super windy, surprisingly. Mm-hmm. What about the fried chicken? I mean, I like fried chicken, but I'm not in the know in Taiwan. Where is that a place or the name of a shop, Jipai? Can somebody share with us your chicken knowledge?
Yeah, I think that was me. So the jipai or the da jipai is like as big as your face, is thinner than your finger. It has several different spices, and it's a little bit different than, let's say, Korean or Japanese fried chicken. And so to me, it's usually more flavorful and more satisfying than regular fried chicken.
What's unique about Taiwanese fried chicken? Can we talk about that for a minute? Because I think if you gave, I know if with Korean, if they put gochujang, I'd be like, okay, this is easy. But like a kind of plain fried chicken with just seasoning or no seasoning, what's unique about Taiwanese fried chicken? Anybody can share. Ramon, what's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it's a different cut of the chicken, possibly. That's why it's kind of thin. Maybe it's closer to the rib. Usually that kind of meat is tastier.
Okay, so we're not talking wings or
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Drumsticks. Okay. Yeah, I've had basil on fried things in Taiwan, especially what's that unusual thing? It's like octopus lips. I forget. They're called like Dragon Ball something, or that's like the slang, but they're basically octopus lips. I'm not crazy, right? Other people have had this. It's like a traditional Taiwanese fried thing, and sometimes they put basil on it.
You're not talking about takoyaki, are you?
Oh no, yeah, not takoyaki. Come on, you're making me look crazy. You need to you need to help me out.
I know the fried squid beaks, and they're like little round balls.
Yeah, I think that's why they're called Dragon Ball Z or whatever, because they're basically they just look like little seafood balls, but apparently, yeah, they're the lips of a squid or octopus.
Yeah, squid beaks.
Thank you, Benji. Thank you. Good soups, Kyombi. Mm-hmm. Okay, I think we're going down the food rabbit hole a little bit. What are some other 7-Eleven? Yeah. A lot of green spaces, a lot of amazing nature, especially once you start heading east or south. Well, not okay, the north too, right? Orderliness, convenience stores. Yeah, I cannot. Yeah, the communal quality of taking out trash with your neighbors and like doing chit chat, and like if you have to run, being like, "Can you throw this out for me? I'm so sorry, but I'm late for something." And even learning words, like I learned how to say glass just from the recycle workers, because like I tried to give them glass once and he was like bori over there, and I was like, okay, bori, that means glass. So yeah, right, you can learn things by just putting yourself out there. Beautiful ocean, yep. And if you keep going south to the Philippines, it also gets more and more beautiful. The music during school clean time is very cute. The music during take out your trash time, the ice cream truck music. Yeah, I was in Penghu once. I was in Kinmen a few times, and Kinmen is definitely its own kind of place. Yeah, with the food. I'm not sure what's different about the milk tea. Is anyone who wrote about the milk tea and the noodles in Kinmen and Penghu? What's special about? I did see the hand cut, and the noodles dried outside in Kinmen. That was very cool. But I'm wondering what's special about the milk tea.
Oh no, sorry. I just meant. By the way, my name is Girardi. Nice to meet you guys. I think I misread what the question was asking. I think I just meant in general. Like I value having milk tea, beef noodles, things of these type of. I guess you would say.
Comfort foods.
Yeah, like I never had them in the States until I got to Taiwan. So like, I've been hooked ever since. So beef noodles and milk tea, and just like the different variations you can get inside the milk teas as well, ice cream or different flavors as well. It's really interesting.
Yeah, thank you. I think your milk tea or your boba shop order is, if you don't speak Chinese, that's like one of the first things you learn. Like that's how you break into the culture. Like you find out which tea shop you like. In my case, oh God, I'm blanking on it. It's the one with the red sign.
Red ball, black ball? No.
Oh, I just mean the tea shop itself. It's a chain.
Oh, okay.
It's a red lettering. They have a lot of passion fruit teas. Why did I forget? Because I haven't been there for like 6 weeks. It'll come back to me. Can't believe I forgot my favorite tea shop. Shame on me. But yeah, lots of interesting things you can put in there, and jellies, and I like the passion fruit. You know, that's hard to find in the U.S. and even in some other countries in Asia. It's
Oh,
great, you
sorry.
guys.
By the way, I wanted to add, in Penghu, they have the cactus fruit. So that's very popular too. Cactus
Right.
fruit ice cream.
I know. I should have gotten that. I saw some juices with cactus fruit, and then I think there's a famous ice cream shop. Is that right?
Right, that's right.
Dang. Okay, I guess I got to go back to Penghu. Yeah, really cool, interesting. Some of the fruits that are tropical, but others like custard apple, you know, just kind of different, you know, hard to find and special. So cool. Thank you guys for your input. I think we're all fans of Taiwan, so we could go on about that, and we will in person someday at a banquet or something. But for now, let's get into the workshop itself, because we have about an hour now. So yeah, you guys are a bit familiar with this, but we're going to talk a brief overview of TESOL, some acronyms. You know, Fulbright loves the acronyms. So we're going to make sure we're all up to date on that for this year. We'll share about experiences with TEFL in Taiwan. How is English taught in Taiwan? What are classrooms like? What are the children like? Your colleagues, and so on. Quick break, hopefully. And we'll have a discussion because we want to hear some of your personal experiences, things you've learned, advice we can give to new ETAs, and come back for a quick wrap up. So right, what is TESOL? It's a big umbrella term. It's thrown around a lot with ESL, EFL. It goes on and on, right? But basically, it's teaching English to speakers of other languages, people that have a different native language that are learning English, typically as a second language, but it could be a third or fourth language. Depends on the context. But yeah, you guys are familiar with that. General acronyms, like I mentioned, ESL, English as a second language. It's a little bit different. It's used interchangeably sometimes with EFL, but it is a little bit different. So for example, ESL is when, right, so for example, Mana is from Japan. She moved to England when she was a child. She speaks Japanese at home with her friends, some of her friends. However, at school, she learns her subjects in English, and she communicates with people in her community outside of her family in English, right? So it's the language. English is the language of the community, some parts of the community at least, but it's not typically spoken at home. There is access and exposure to native Englishes, in addition to the L1, the first language. Right, so typically, right, so it may be the main language used in the classroom. It might be, a course subject as well. EFL, probably a little bit more of a bigger umbrella term. We have an example of somebody from Libya. He speaks Arabic with his family and friends. He uses mostly Arabic at school, but he has some classes in English. So he's mostly speaking his L1, his first language, with his community, right? So in this case, English is not the language at home. It's not the language at the community. And this might sound a little bit like Taiwan and some of the challenges with teaching in a place like Taiwan, because sometimes we struggle to find ways for students to communicate authentically in English, because again, they don't really speak it at home. They probably don't speak it much outside of the classroom with their friends out in the community. So it presents challenges, EFL, definitely. Students have limited access to English, or even if they do have access, they don't necessarily pursue all options because it takes a lot of work, they're busy, parents might not help, lots of possible reasons, right? So they're learning English as a subject. Sometimes, we could talk about CLIL a little bit, or content-based instruction. Sometimes they are learning a subject as well as the language, but not always, right? ELL, We call them ELL sometimes. These are basically your students, right? So an example is this boy. Really fun and interesting names in Taiwanese classrooms because they're chosen names, right? So the English names, you might have a student named Golden. He speaks Taiwanese with his family. So this is more getting into the nuance of languages in Taiwan. So he speaks Taiwanese at home, at school. Obviously, most courses are going to be in Mandarin, except for a few English classes, right? So we call him English language learner. It's a blanket term, and it's used in a lot of different contexts, not just in, a lot of these words are not just used in Taiwan, obviously, right? Okay, we are going to talk about some Fulbright specific acronyms because there are a lot of them. And I remember when you're new to Fulbright, it's a little bit overwhelming, and especially to ETAs, because I think I remember a lot of ETAs mixing up who's a coordinator, who's an advisor, so they sometimes switch us up, and I'm like, oh, we're different. We both want to help you, but we're a little bit different, right? So we can talk about English around the world in terms of kind of circles, right? In the inner circle, we have countries like the US and the UK. So this suggests what? What about English spoken in those countries? Can anybody chime in the chat box? Why is the US in the UK in the inner circle? What does that mean? Yeah, so this brings up a lot of questions, right? I think the metaphor of a circle is a little bit tricky because we have idioms about being on the inside or looking out, and it troubles me a little bit when we talk about language like that. But good question, right? So is there an official language in the United States? Does anybody know? Is there an official, is English the official language? Thank you, Kambi. Yeah, so there's no law, there's no federal law or rules about official languages in the US. We think of it that way, certainly sometimes, but there's no kind of, there's no law or rules about that, right? So, right, Malka, English as the dominant language, right? That changes, right? The demographics of countries change. So for example, Spanish gets spoken by more and more people over time. But yeah, when we think of this inner circle of Englishes, and hopefully some of you have come across the phrase world Englishes before. It's a really kind of inclusive way to think about different ways that English is used in different countries, right? So if you look at the second circle around the US, the UK, we could throw Australia, Canada in the inner circle. In the outer circle, we have India, Nigeria as examples. And if you know a little bit about history or the English language, why would India and Nigeria be in this kind of second circle? What's going on between the two of those countries? Ramon or Ihua, if you feel free to chime in as well. Right. Thank you, Michael. So yeah, another ELF can also be an acronym for English as lingua franca, right? This comes from a time when French was kind of the international language, which it's not anymore. Right. So good. In India, Nigeria, English might be the language of professional interaction, of law, of certain institutions. But also historically, these are typically countries that have a kind of colonial legacy. So we could include countries in there, of course, like the Philippines. in countries that have been affected by colonization, especially linguistically, right? You know, you could speak to somebody from Nigeria, India, or the Philippines that speaks wonderful English, perfect English, but it's not their first language, right? So it's really amazing. It's really impressive to have this happening, this kind of phenomenon, right? And then the expanding circle. China, Russia, Brazil are a few examples. Question is, where would we put Taiwan if we're looking at these circles? Where would they belong? Really cool, right? It's great that you guys mentioned that things move, things change. I think sometimes we think language is static, but it's not, right? English language is a good example of how a language is constantly changing, and having new words and words that fall out and fall in. But yeah, right. So Taiwan would be with most countries because although they do have a colonial history, it's more linguistically, it's more with Japan, right? So sometimes you'll meet elderly people in Taiwan. Maybe they don't speak too much Japanese anymore, but they could probably understand somebody pretty well in Japanese. So it's pretty cool. But that's part of the colonial legacy of Taiwan. There's not so much of that in terms of English. But yeah, definitely Taiwan would be in the expanding circle. It's interesting that, yeah, you guys say they're maybe looking at the outer circle. But I don't know, it'd be hard to see English becoming an official language in Taiwan, or kind of the lingua franca. Yeah, I think there is a little bit of tension between those two circles in a lot of countries, right? Between you know, wanting to be part of the bigger world and economies, and also being true to people and the histories and you know, your own legacies. So yeah, interesting conversations. Thank you for your input. Briefly about the Fulbright acronyms that we use all the time, right? So if you're an ETF, you were pretty much an ETA before, unless you somehow got through the system in a special kind of way. But so we all know what an ETA is, right? This is a person that comes over, usually as a first year Fulbrighter, and you know, they're assigned to a specific region and school or schools. And you know, if you did that, you remember what your first days and weeks were like. They're challenging, a little overwhelming, I'm sure, at times. But I'm sure now, looking back, you have mostly fond memories of those first weeks. But right, so they're, in some ways, they're kind of beginners to teaching. Most ETAs in Taiwan don't have a background in education. Some do. Some have really amazing backgrounds in education, but most have backgrounds in stuff that's just foreign to me. You know, my background is with the arts and with education, so stuff in science, or you know, things like that are really challenging to me, really amazing. So we have all different kinds of ETAs with different backgrounds, and they bring that to their job here, right? So they you know, that affects what they want to teach and what they learned and how they think students learn and so on, right? So ETAs, ETFs, I think most of you here should be ETFs, right? So I think there's varying acronyms, but the one I've heard the most is English Teaching Fellow. I think it was something different in years past, but still ETF, right? So the majority of you have taught or will be teaching in elementary, junior high schools. I think there are a few high school teachers once in a while. Is there anybody here that knows they're going to be teaching high school this upcoming year? Yeah, I only encountered a few last year, but yeah, I like My background is more teaching at the college level and high school, so that's kind of a lot of my experiential knowledge of teaching. But kids are great and a lot of fun to teach as well, right? So you guys know what you do. It's quite similar to the roles of ETAs. You guys just have more experience. You probably have more knowledge of different methodologies, different pedagogies you might try, because you've hopefully had some interesting workshops with advisors and have learned on your own in the classroom, learned from your colleagues, and so on, from maybe some academic articles as well. And you know, maybe some of you presented at mid-year, for example, last year in GIE. That was pretty cool for advisors because we got to really watch, we got to watch a lot of ETFs present on things they've discovered in their classrooms or strategies they've had. And they were very nuanced and really interesting and just really inspiring. So if you have the chance, you know, please try to present at one of the conferences. You know, they're really fun. Okay, LETs. I know you're familiar with them, but yeah, you know, you've probably had very specific experiences based on your school, and I think entering that situation, maybe you weren't sure what you were going to get, but I am sure you learned a lot about, you know, how to find middle ground, how to collaborate, how to give your LET space, when to let them know you need help, in trying to find a kind of system that works. I think the hard part, and you guys can comment on this later, but I think one of the hard parts for ETFs is that it's human nature. You know, you have a very specific experience in Kinmen or Penghu, and then you come to a different site, a different region, and you're hoping to have maybe something similar, but maybe your LET is a little bit hard to read, or they seem aloof, or something's just not gelling fast enough, so it can get frustrating. So yeah, I'm very aware of that, and part of our job is to make things go more smoothly between you and the LETs, but at the same time, you guys are there day to day in the classroom working with them, and you know, it's just a work skill and a life skill, learning how to work with people that are similar to you, are different from you, and just finding your kind of niche, you know, finding your way to interact and to, you know, to be to you know, to teach beneficially for the kids, right? So your LETs work really hard, full-time public school teachers. And we can't forget that in addition to teaching, they might have other responsibilities, maybe extracurricular stuff, maybe with field trips, maybe some kind of club or organization. And then the administration might give them tasks that they might not necessarily give to an ETA or ETF. So just like you, they have a lot on their plate, work really hard, and really sweet people with a lot of good ideas. So really like interacting with the LETs as well. This is the big one. I'm not sure how many of you would have interacted with the ELTAs, because last year it was more a thing in the south, in Kaohsiung, for example, at Zhongshan, at the university we were based at, and also Wenzhou, which is another university that specializes in languages. So we had a pretty big ELTA program in the south last year, and this year it's getting really big from what I've heard. So you will probably rub shoulders with a lot of the ELTAs this year if you didn't last year. If you did meet ELTAs last year, you know, you can share it in the chat. Let us know where you met them or where they were from. But I had a great time. I did some workshops mostly in the spring, spring and winter, with ELTAs. They're really cool. They're essentially very similar to an ETA or ETF, but they don't teach full time because they're getting their degrees in Taiwan. So they're studying, and you know, not necessarily in English or education. It could be in, you know, political science or, you know, any other thing. but they're great. They come from all over, so you end up with a really rich cohort, really diverse cohort. So I remember having people in the workshops from Vietnam, a lot of people from Indonesia, Guatemala, the Middle East, South Africa, just really all over. So it makes the workshops really, diverse in a different kind of way. And, some of them have experience with teaching, but it's really inspiring to me because, the English is not their first language. So not only are they studying, getting their degree in English, but they're also teaching in English. So they're really interesting people, very sweet. And you will probably meet some of them either at conferences or workshops. There will probably be more of them coming to workshops in addition to LETs. So yeah, be friendly with them. Most of them have probably been in Taiwan for a couple of years. And yeah, we actually got to meet President Tsai, I think in April. She came to Zhongshan, and 3 of us advisors and a few ELTAs got to be in the same room with her, and they explained the ELTA program, and she walked by us and gave us the thumbs up and said good job and everything. So, in Taiwan you can meet all kinds of different people, famous people and politicians. And yeah, so look out for ELTAs if you haven't met any yet. They're lovely. Right. We've already introduced ourselves. So basically just a reminder about what we do, what we're here for. You guys know pretty much the drill. The one thing I wanted to add for this year is at the bottom. So there's an inaugural program called the EMI program. And there will be basically 2 sites. I will be at one of them in Taipei. It will be at I don't remember the full name of the university, but it's basically the tech university in Taipei. And then Ramon will be with another group, I think with Deja and one other person I'm not remembering at the moment, but they'll be at another university, I think around Zhongli in Taoyuan. Right. So yeah, this is a new program, but it's basically about English being used at universities as the method, the means of instruction, right? So English being used in any kind of course. It could be a journalism course or a science course, but English is the primary language used between professors and the students. So new program. I think we're still learning a lot about what it's going to look like, but if you stay in teaching long enough, you might be an EMI teacher or professor yourself someday, because a lot of universities around the world are teaching more and more classes in English to attract students, to attract more money, but also at the same time to raise their profile, to have more research, and just to kind of raise their clout in the world, and attract better professors, better researchers, and kind of uplift the economy in a way. So it's the way things are kind of going with English and global economies. So it's just something that is going to keep growing in different parts of the world. I don't think any of the Southern advisor coordinators are here, but these were the local coordinators in Kaohsiung last year, and had a great time. They're lovely to work with. Kenny and Ellie are a lot of fun. You've met them. I'm sure Kiambi can talk about them. And Fonda, I think she's been with Fulbright about 10 or 11 years. So she's been there for a long time, and they're great resources. As you know, I'm sure you have good friendships with some of your coordinators, and they have tough jobs. They're kind of the one behind the scenes that are making sure everything works well, works right. And sometimes they don't get the thanks or the praise they need or deserve. So if whenever you have the chance, please thank your coordinators, crack jokes with them, check in with them, because, they're under a lot of stress, and they won't tell you that, right? They won't tell you that they're stressed out or they're worried about something or they're having a personal issue. But you can feel it sometimes. So, they're just like us. They need a little support sometimes, a little joke here and there. I'm sure a lot of you know that, and you have great relationships with coordinators around Taiwan. But yeah, just a reminder. And yeah. So I think before I go on, we're going to take a quick 10-minute break and come back. So please come back around 8:15. Okay, it's 8:15 in my time zone. But if you're in Taiwan, that would be 11:15 in the morning. So see you soon.
Yes.
Okay, so they're going to test your knowledge, your Taiwan knowledge in interesting ways. Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. So you guys been here for at least 1 year, right? So let's see how much you know about Taiwan. And let me share my screen. I'm gonna play Kahoot now. So is everybody back? Yes, good. All right. Let me share my screen here. A tap. This one. Can you guys see my screen now?
Looks good.
Yeah. All right. Please join this. Do we have everybody?
I think so, because some of us aren't playing, like the advisors aren't playing.
All right, so shall we stop? So what is the height of Taipei 101? All right, it's 508. All right, Taiwan used to be the tallest building in the world between 2004 and 2004 and 2009, but now it's the 11th. So, all right, next one. Let's see, Audrey. So, what's this? I'm sure you guys seen this before, but what's this? Is that a trash can, recycle bin, post box, or a Jaws paper burner?
I thought it was a place to put love letters that didn't work.
Oh, you
When I
guys
fir-
are right.
When I first saw that.
Yeah, don't do that. I know a lot of foreigners put trash in it. It's totally unrespectful. Yeah, so this is a Jaws paper burner, especially in this month. This is Ghost Month. So you will see a lot of people burning joss paper to the ghost. All right, that's kind of our religion. So what can you do in a convenience store in Taiwan? You've been here for a while, you know it's crazy in Taiwan, the convenience store. So what can you do? Right, you can do all of the above. So you can get hot sweet potato. When you're hungry, you can get bubble tea, and then you can actually pay your phone bill and also send and receive package and everything. So you can also leave on the chat box if you know something else that surprised you a lot. So we would like to know. All right, because for us, it's very, it's like usual for us. So we don't see it's unusual, but I would like to know what kind of things you would feel surprised that you can do in a convenience store. All right, so next one. I think we've talked this at the beginning. When you hear this, what should you do? That's right, it's time to take out the trash. All right, this surprised a lot of foreigners because when you guys hear music truck, you would see it's time to get ice cream, right? It's quite different in Taiwan, and it's actually become our famous culture here. All right, so last one. How many official recognized tribes are there in Taiwan? Yeah, there are actually 16. When I was younger, there were only 9 of them were officially recognized, but now it's 16. So if you are interested in knowing which 16s, you can Google it. All right. Any questions? All right, let's see who's the winner. Who's this one? Yeah. All right. Good job.
But who's TW?
Yeah, who's TW?
Oh, okay. Is that a taco or empanada?
All right.
Oh, it's a dumpling, of course. Okay, Ihua, Ramon. Anything else? Or do you want to talk about prizes? You guys are in charge of prizes, right?
When we meet.
Sounds like a promise.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Or I'll give you. I'll stop sharing here.
Okay, guys. So thanks for playing along with the Kahoot. Got about 22 minutes left. So we're not going to cover everything that we prepared in the slide because obviously we don't want to be too repetitive. You guys are very aware of a lot of how the way things go in the classrooms here. But maybe we could refresh a little bit about the context, kind of where English started, right? So starting out in curriculum, starting at the junior high level in the 70s, and then in the 90s, trying out English as early as 5th and 6th grade. And then, as in a lot of countries in East Asia, it kind of kept getting brought in earlier and earlier. In 2005 with third grade, and 2018, some pretty ambitious goals that we've been seeing around the island about trying to be bilingual by 2030. So I'm thinking that's part of the reason that the president came all the way down to Zhongshan in Kaohsiung to hear about the ELTA program and how there are so many teachers, different programs in Taiwan that are improving students' English language abilities very, very quickly. So with Fulbright, there's another program, I think the FET, correct me if I'm wrong. But then, we have the ELTAs working with us. So it's a big effort, and an ambitious goal, but we'll see how it goes. Right. So it's a pretty fair concern that for some parents or for some citizens, with English being used more and more, and hearing a goal like, Taiwan multilingual in English by 2030, not everybody in society necessarily, has great feelings about that, because it can seem like a little bit much. Why English? There are a lot of other languages in Taiwan, for example, Hakka, Taiwanese. And then if you spend time in the south, especially heading to the east around Taidong, you'll encounter even more indigenous languages. And then when I was all the way up or down, sorry, I'm thinking Philippines, but when I was all the way down in Lanyu, Orchid Island, I think in June, they speak a local language there that's an Austronesian language, sounds a lot like Filipino languages. So that was really eye-opening to see, way before English or Mandarin or Taiwanese was being spoken on the island. It was very rich in a lot of ways, including linguistically. And fortunately, some of those languages are still around, being spoken, and they should be recognized and talked about and protected, right? So we want to kind of temper these big ideas about English with kind of assuring students and parents and other teachers that, we're not trying to push out other languages. We're just trying to enrich students' linguistic repertoires. Right? How is the government going to do all this? Right, so there's a lot of incentivization for local governments, for school districts, if they offer more courses in English, if they have more English teachers, if they have more programs like CLIL and so on. And a lot of these changes are being made by people like you, ECFs, ETAs, coordinators, administrators, some efforts from advisors to just grow this whole process, right? So to update curriculums and put more emphasis on the production of language, right? We don't want students that are passive, just sitting there, taking in grammar points, falling asleep. We want them to be exposed to more authentic situations, to do project-based learning, task-based learning. We want teachers to be thinking about differentiated instruction and reaching out to all students, not just the ones that speak up or that sit in the front or that are easy to understand. So yeah, it takes a lot of different angles and approaches, but they all have their role. Right, so I've mentioned a little bit about CLIL. I think some of you, especially, I think most of the CLIL was concentrated in the northern part of the island recently. So maybe some of you have taught like a CLIL instructor before. Maybe some of you haven't really heard of it or you've avoided it thus far. But right, it stands for Content Language Integrated Learning. Two birds, one stone. You kind of teach the language alongside a content course. So maybe with art or English used during PE time. So the students learn the language as well as the subject itself, the content itself.
Just to chime in a little bit, I would say it would be useful to have some experience with CLIL because I think if you want to continue teaching, some job applications will ask if you have CLIL experience, and sometimes that can be a big difference between someone who gets a job and who doesn't.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Ramon. Yeah, great. I mean, you guys, you're a bit younger than us, but it's not, you always got to be thinking about your next step, which you obviously are doing from year to year. You've decided to stay in Taiwan, but at the same time, yeah, are you going to get a master's or a second master's, or are you going to go back and work in the field that you studied originally for your bachelor's? Are you going to try something else? Are you going to volunteer somewhere else? Are you going to stay in teaching? So yeah, if you're going to stay in teaching, especially in the international context in Asia or elsewhere, CLIL is a big thing. There are other acronyms like CPI, which can vary by definition, but just like with EMI, instruction, especially content instruction, is becoming very popular in English for political reasons, for financial reasons, for all kinds of reasons that governments will, or universities or schools will justify. So great point. Yeah, it's a good thing to have on if you want to broaden your resume, some CLIL experience. Right, we've talked about incentivization already. Taiwan has money for these kind of programs, and it does vary by region. I know Kiambi's here, and I think I saw a few other ETAs from last year in Kinmen, but Kinmen, unique place, very interesting. And apparently the local government has a lot of funding for education, and I'm sure other things, in part because of the presence of Kaohsiung there and the fact that they produce a lot and they make money off of tax, I believe. And that filters back into social programming. So things like education. I believe every public school in Kinmen has at least one ETA, ETF. I think that was the case last year's. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty impressive, and it's amazing to see how the larger government and the local governments are working together to make English happen all over Taiwan. Right, so you guys might have experience with CLIL. You might have taught it. You might like it. You might not like it, or you might have had more experience just kind of being the language cultural ambassador at your school. Maybe you were very involved with clubs or extracurriculars. Maybe you weren't. Maybe you were expected to teach more from a textbook. Like I said at the outset, it depends on the history of your school and their needs, or what they perceive to be their needs. So yeah, these positions take flexibility and patience, and fortunately you guys are really good with that. And you find ways to teach your courses in the ways you want, but also kind of that appease other teachers and parents and the students themselves, right? So I mentioned earlier, it's tough. We're human. We compare. That's what we do. But every situation is unique. We need to, just like me coming up to the north, I was in the south last year. So some of the people I'll be working with will be new. You just have to get used to sensitivities, how people work, their strengths and things they struggle with, and how you can help them, right? Because you just want, when people around you succeed, it's going to make your life easier. So we always want the people we work with to feel good, to feel positive, and to try to help them when we can. A lot of questions. Yeah, we're running a little low on time, but I did mention exposure earlier, and kind of authentic learning, and how that can be a struggle in kind of the third circle of countries that are They're not native speakers of English, and they don't have a colonial history with English. So, providing good opportunities for students to really engage with the language outside of the classroom can be challenging. So sometimes you guys bring a lot into the classroom, a lot of stuff outside of the textbook. And that's really up to you and the LET or the administration. But there's a lot of ways to get to know your students, to build rapport with them, whether it's with clubs or, with holidays, a lot of other things. So, you find your ways to connect with them and to make your classroom as vibrant as you can. Right? You guys know how to rely on your support team, especially your coordinators. Like I said, we all know they're great. They do so much behind the scenes, and they always, they deserve a lot more credit than we sometimes give them, unfortunately. So they're also figuring things out, right? They get information from the people at the top of Fulbright, who get information from the local government, also from Washington, D.C. So a lot of these things, like the EMI program, brand new in Taiwan, not in Taiwan, but with Fulbright in Taiwan. So, we're all kind of learning. We have our skill sets and our interests and our experiences, but it takes a village, right? We're not going to really look at the textbooks. You guys know them pretty well about a lot of this. I'm trying to keep things authentic. You guys know about, realistic goals, the value in being positive in your classrooms, language consistency, classroom English, how that can really help you, especially, in the first few weeks, in the first month, how that's so crucial, right? You guys know that. That's a really important time, and it kind of will dictate the rest of your year. If you address certain things in your first few weeks, or if you don't, it's hard to tell a group of third graders, in February, how you're going to change things, because they get used to things like we all do. So that first month, really crucial. And so this is part of the reason why we have these workshops, right? To see each other again, but also to talk about, okay, so how am I going to approach this new year? What am I going to do differently? What worked well last year that I want to do again? So you can think back to workshops we've given, TPR, what are you going to focus on, right? Already had our break, already had our Kahoot. We don't have enough time to break off into groups, really. I think we'll just get lost and run out of time. So I put 4 questions. They were going to be group discussion questions, but I would really appreciate it if you just chose one, whichever one you have something to say about. And we'll take about 3 minutes. You can arrange your thoughts, and then I'll call on a few of you to hopefully share some things you've learned, some knowledge you've gained from your experiences in the classroom or outside of the classroom in Taiwan, and especially thinking about what kind of advice should we be giving to ETAs? What should they know? What should they be warned about? What should they remember to bring with them? Wherever you want to take it. So let's take a couple minutes to think about that. So in the interest of time, I think I'm going to ask a few of the people I remember from last year as ETAs. So Lexi, are you there?
Hi.
Hey, so Lexi, you were a first-year ETA in Kinmen last year, is that right?
Yes.
And what did you teach?
I taught elementary school at Hapu.
Mhm. Okay. So which one of these questions did you take on?
I was thinking more along the lines of compare and contrast the LETs you have worked with. Also, I'm sorry, there's construction right outside my window, so it might get loud. So I think in terms of developing a good partnership, it's good to be open and communicable, especially from the ETA, ETF side, because sometimes your teachers will kind of need you to step in because they have way more classes than you do, but they're afraid to kind of take that step and reach out to you personally. Like there are days when I don't have a lot on my plate and my LET will be like, I'm so sorry, but can you help me with this? And I'm like, yes, definitely. I'm willing. And it took a while for me to kind of get into the mindset of let me reach out to her because I finished lesson planning for one particular class and I knew she had other stuff to do. So I'd be like, hey, is there anything else I can take on to help ease your workload a bit? So yeah, I think just being open to helping, very outspoken in what you can provide in the classroom.
Yeah, that's really insightful. I think this came up a few times last year. But yeah, I mean, different cultures communicate differently. I think for some Westerners, we might be more vocal or we might be more direct, more expressive. And maybe in Taiwan, people might communicate more with their body language or their facial expressions, or maybe not at all. So you just really have to ask. So that's really, really helpful. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt to ask. I think you're not going to offend anybody by trying to help, of course. But yeah, they're there to help you. You're there to help them. And maybe you'll be besties, maybe you won't. But at the end of the day, you know, it's going to be beneficial if you find that common ground. And I think Kinmen is a little unique because a lot of the LETs in Kinmen are pretty young, as I recall. In all my journeys, all of my ETAs were in Kinmen. So yeah, I think, you know, sometimes they're about your age or maybe a little bit older, a couple of years, but I think that's one of the unique things about, you know, every region has different types of LETs, right? So yeah, Lexi, thank you. Does anybody else want to share some experiences or insights or advice?
I can share a thought.
Please.
I don't know if I answered one specific question as much as maybe a combination. But I think to your point of kind of setting a standard right when you come into the classroom, and also kind of trying to approach English teaching in a way that like doesn't center English as something that's more important than Taiwanese culture. One thing that was really important to me was I don't have an English name. I've never had an English name. My name is Hebrew. I grew up, I mean, I'm Jewish, and I made that really clear to my students in the beginning because I taught in GIE last year in Alishan. I worked in an indigenous school. And so my students had Zhou names, Chinese names, and English names. And I told them, you don't need to have an English name to speak English. And that's extremely important to me. And that was kind of like the way that I wanted to enter the classroom, to let them know that like, and I asked them what they wanted to be called. And some chose their English names and some chose their indigenous names and some chose their Chinese. And I think that ended up setting a really good standard for the rest of the year. And so, yeah, I guess if that's advice or just a good thought of a way to kind of like approach the classroom and helping us, you know, approach English teaching in a way that dismantles the colonizer attitude of it is like, come as you are, and making sure my students know that that's important.
That's really nice. That's really beautiful. Yeah, because when you enter their classroom, you might be looked at as an authority, right? They might think, okay, this is the real deal. This is a person from America. They're an expert. We don't question them. They're the best. But yeah, I think that's part of exchange programs, is just empowering the people you work with. Like, you know, just because I'm from the US, it doesn't mean I'm more legitimate in some way than your culture. Or yeah, exactly. You don't need to have an English name. You know, you have a really interesting name, and you know, you can use that. So yeah, I think there are definitely ideas about, yeah, what's legitimate, who's the expert, but you know, even kids are experts on different topics, so that's really a really nice sentiment. Anybody else want to share? Last minute. Kiambi, you've been in Kinmen, Kaohsiung, but you were like kind of far away in Kaohsiung. You were almost, well, I guess you weren't in Pingdong, but you've been in Kinmen and Kaohsiung, is that right?
Yes, correct. Yeah, and in Kaohsiung, I was very far out in the mountains in Chisan.
Right. What was different about Kinmen and being in a really rural part of the mainland? I mean, what stands out to you in both experiences?
I think in Kinmen, because it was such a small community, I think it was easier to find yourself into some sort of like fun, engaging activity, and that you can just like meet up with other ETAs, or you could just go to like the recreation center that everyone always goes to throughout the week. In Kaohsiung, I think it was more of like you having to make more of an effort to find yourself into these things, like you looking and searching for different forms of engagement that you wanted versus like knowing all about the area in Kinmen. And I think that was my biggest takeaway, just like putting myself out there in Kaohsiung and just really looking to see what there was. Whereas in Kinmen, I think also because there's such a big cohort, someone will pitch an idea and then everyone will go. But in Kaohsiung, because people are more spaced out and it's bigger, you have to make more of an effort to find the things that you're interested in to keep your hobbies alive.
That's a good point. Yeah, despite being very kind of far away from Taiwan, Kinmen, well, no, I would say even the locals have a very kind of tight-knit community and like a very specific kind of Kinmenese culture, just like walking around and seeing the buildings and the people. Like it just feels different from mainland Taiwan. So yeah, interestingly enough, we have a lot of ETAs there and a few ETFs. So it's a pretty big community considering, I don't know how many people live in Kinmen, but it's not very big compared to Kaohsiung, right? But yeah, Kaohsiung, it's big, right? It's pretty spread out. So you have people that like are in the city, and then you are kind of over near the mountains, and then you have people that are kind of closer to Pingdong, and then to the south as well. So it's more spread out, kind of more of a city commuter kind of vibe. So it's kind of more DIY in terms of what are you going to do in your free time, right? So it was we're done, guys. Thank you so much for joining. It's good to see familiar faces. I'm glad that many of you came back. I wasn't sure that I was coming back, but you know, now that I'm here and seeing your faces again, it really affirms you know, the people here. And yeah, I look forward to seeing the new people I haven't met in person. Hopefully that will be soon. I'm still in the US, but hopefully in the next few weeks. And yeah, thanks for your participation, and thanks to the coordinators and the other advisors. On Thursday, Ramon and Iwa will be leading the workshop on, can you remind us of the topic on Thursday?
I think it's the same thing, but just for first year ETAs and
Oh,
first
right.
year ETFs or something like that.
Oh, right. Okay. We're not onto our second topic yet. That's right. Okay. So yeah, is there anybody that's not back in Taiwan yet? Am I the only one? Am I the lame one?